Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. This is the third and final rest day of the 2022 Giro d'Italia. Now we've seen 15 spectacular days of racing, but I want to go back to January. I want to go back to January because I want to discuss one of the big surprises of this year's Giro d'Italia. And I think in my mind, when you're sitting at the January training camp and all the directors are together with all the teams here at Giro d'Italia, trying to discuss what kind of outcome they would want out of the Giro d'Italia this year, I gotta believe the big surprise has to be Intermarche. There's no doubt about it, right? Biniam Girmay's win on stage 10 was magic. I mean, the guy beat going head-to-head with Mathieu van der Poel to the line when Mathieu van der Poel just cracked, head dropped down, gave him the thumbs up, and Biniam Girmay, the Eritrean, won a spectacular stage 10 here at the Giro d'Italia. On top of that, remember, you're sitting in January and you're going, Biniam Girmay is going to win a stage at the Giro and beat Mathieu van der Poel. That has to be a big surprise. But on top of that, when you look at Pozzovivo, Domenico Pozzovivo, the Italian rider, sitting fifth on the general classification, just about a minute back on GC leader Richard Carapaz here, in the final selection on all these hard stages and mountain summit finishes that we've had in his first 15 days. On top of that, they got another rider sitting 12th, Jan Hertz. Now, when Intermarche was sitting at the training camp, can you imagine that's what they were discussing? I mean, you could throw out other teams like Trek Segafredo, but is it really that big of a surprise that you get a slightly unknown rider like Juan Lopez in the race leader's jersey for 10 stages, 9 stages here at the Giro d'Italia? Is that a big surprise? It happens just about in all the Grand Tours that some smaller rider takes a risk, gets in the early break, and then holds on to the pink jersey. Now, you could say, Chris, but they won a stage with Giulio Ciccone yesterday on stage 15. Giulio Ciccone's won stages at the Giro before, quality rider, and that team, that management, that organization, that team, they've won Grand Tours before. I know because I was on one. So when you look at Trek Segafredo, it's not that big of a surprise to have pink jersey and win a stage. It's a great Giro, there's no doubt about it. But when you compare it with Intermarche, could you really say that Intermarche winning a stage with Biniam Girmay and then sitting fifth on the general classification? Now let me remind you, when it comes to Intermarche, I don't even think come January 1st, if I remember correctly, Pozzovivo wasn't even on the team. They signed him late in January or early February to bring Pozzovivo onto the Intermarche team, and now he's sitting fifth on the general classification at a Grand Tour. I mean, that is a spectacular ride here for Intermarche. Now, my next team, my worst team, the team that's let me down throughout this Giro d'Italia, it has to be Movistar, right? I mean, there's nobody that's riding on the front. There's no team. They've never gotten on the front and seen the whole team lined out, blowing the field up spectacularly. Alejandro Valverde on stage 14 in Torino on that circuit stage. He was isolated. He had 2 teammates with him trying to bring him back up to that Bora Hansgrohe-led group of 12 up there. And 2 of his teammates blew up the moment their face touched the front of the wind, with Alejandro looking over at his teammates like, really? Come on, guys. I'm 42 years old and I'm losing 2 teammates after 500 meters of pulling. Absolutely ridiculous when you look at the results for Movistar here. That is Alejandro Valverde sitting highest on the general classification. That part doesn't surprise me so much. But the fact that they have 0 teammates with Alejandro Valverde that can do any work late into these stages at the Giro d'Italia, they have to be the worst team here when you're talking about January training camp and their goals set for the Giro d'Italia. Now, the most normal, expected team has to be Ineos. They won last year with Egan Bernal here at the Giro d'Italia. So come January 1st, when all the managers are sitting there discussing this Giro d'Italia and they're talking about what they want, this has to be ideal. I mean, we're 15 stages just finished. Now we're on the third and final rest day, and Carapaz is wearing the pink jersey. That is exactly what they expected. So they have to be the team that, of all the teams of results here of what you expected the most, it had to be Richard Carapaz wearing the pink jersey here after stage 15 finish. Now, could you say, well, it would be nice if we had a stage win? Yeah, they might have expected a stage win, but remember, if they wanted stage wins, they would have just brought Filippo Ganna here. He would have guaranteed him a time trial stage win or something throughout this early 15 stages. But when you look at the course profile and you know you got Filippo Ganna that you want to bring to the Tour de France, they leave him home. So wearing pink jersey after the third rest day finishes, starting stage 16 when we get into the big mountains. That's got to be exactly what you would have expected from Team Ineos. Most confusing team has to be BikeExchange for me. When you're sitting at the January training camp and you're setting up the team to go to the Giro d'Italia and you're saying Simon Yates is going to be our guy to win the Giro. At this point in time, you'd want him in pink. Now, he crashed, he hit his knee. There's nothing you can do about that. He was spectacular on the individual time trial and won and blew everybody's doors off. That showed that he was on great form. He crashed, bumped his knee, then went bad, dropped on blockhouse and lost a bunch of time. So, really confusing, right? Those are obvious reasons, though, that you go, well, he crashed, he hit his knee, he's not going good. Clearly, he won stage 14 in Torino, so you know he has good form. But you can't predict a crash. You can't predict hitting your knee. Here's the problem, though. This is why they're so confusing to me. If Simon Yates was to be in pink jersey right now, starting stage 16 tomorrow here at the Giro d'Italia, what team would he have around him to help defend him in these big mountain stages? Because as a whole, BikeExchange has been spectacular in terms of holding back and staying out of trouble, with the exception of the crash of Simon Yates. But as a whole, though, even though they've stayed out of trouble, they've rested perfectly, when have we ever seen BikeExchange be dominant throughout the first 15 stages here at the Giro d'Italia? Even if Simon Yates doesn't crash and hit his knee and he's wearing the pink jersey right now, who would he have around him in these later mountain stages that are just beginning tomorrow on 16 and 17? That is the most confusing team in my mind right here at the Giro when you're talking about it January. Because you know when they picked a team in January for Simon Yates to possibly be a big challenger and win here at the Giro d'Italia, you had to have some teammates wrapped around him. And other than Chris Hamilton, I haven't seen a whole lot of power in BikeExchange back there with any kind of real force that could have defended a pink jersey. So that's what I'm most confused about when I'm talking about BikeExchange. Now, Mathieu van der Poel. How can you get through the Giro d'Italia without talking about Mathieu van der Poel? He was spectacular on stage 1. He held the pink jersey all the way through the individual time trial, then gave it up on Mount Etna. Now we're deep into the Giro, but remember, he has a Tour de France coming. I think it's a mistake to let Mathieu van der Poel continue. When you look at yesterday's stage 15, he's in the final group of 30. He's starting the second climb. Monster climb on yesterday's stage. He has a 1 minute and 30-second gap, and that gap is closed quickly from one EF Education rider and one spectacular Giulio Ciccone from Trek Segafredo. But as soon as Giulio Ciccone gets up there, Mathieu van der Poel pulls the plug and blows up. At this point in time, I've seen Mathieu van der Poel spectacular on stage 1 and solid, very aggressive, and maybe too aggressive throughout this Giro d'Italia already. But remember, he has the Tour de France coming. It's going to come up soon. If he goes deep into this Giro and doesn't pull the plug anytime soon, he's not going to have that many days to get ready for the Tour de France. And at the Tour de France, he's going to have the best, absolutely best 100% riders in the world, all on form, ready to perform at the Tour de France, and one Wout van Aert. And in my book, you guys all know from the butterfly effect and beyond the covers, I believe Wout van Aert's the biggest, baddest one-day racer on the planet, and Mathieu van der Poel's second to him. Now, that's high to be second, so don't confuse what I'm saying. I think Mathieu van der Poel's a legend. But if he has to come up against a Wout van Aert 100% on form at the Tour de France, he's going to get killed every time they come to the line together. And remember, this is Mathieu van der Poel's first and only Grand Tour that he'll complete. Last year was his first Grand Tour at the Tour de France, but he only went 8 stages, then pulled the plug so that he can go do some little mountain bike race at the Olympics. After that, he crashed out and then had problems with his fitness until it came back. Now, he was spectacular on stage 1, and like I said, solid. But when you're a young kid and you're finishing your first Grand Tour, I don't know if your second tour should come 1 month later and be at the Tour de France fighting against a Wout van Aert and all the best riders in the world. One other rider, a little bit disappointing, but obvious, for obvious reasons, has to be Caleb Ewan. He came in here to win a stage. He came really close there on stage 1, but then crashed and went down. And from that moment on, it was bad luck throughout the first week of racing here at the Giro d'Italia until finally he pulled the plug to get himself ready for the Tour de France. Mark Cavendish's win on stage 3 was spectacular. He let it out from 300 meters to go, but I don't think it's going to be enough to get him to go to the Tour de France, so we'll probably see him try to complete these next two massive mountain stages on 16 and 17 to try to get him to the last sprint stage here at the Giro d'Italia and try to have some kind of hope of still making the Tour de France for Quick-Step. But I don't see it happening when Quick-Step's already signing other sprinters for next year's 2023 season, and Jakobsen is already winning here before the Tour de France starts. Mark Cavendish is going to need some kind of stars alignment and planet in order to make the Tour de France for Quick-Step this year. So possibly look for him to be really aggressive 3 stages from now when he's trying to win the last sprint stage here at the Giro d'Italia. Now, guys, it has been a spectacular 15 days of racing here at the Giro d'Italia. The next 2 stages, talking 16 and 17, are monster climbs, and they don't summit necessarily. They have a bit of a descent, 10 and 15 kilometers to the finish line. So we should see some big action amongst all the GC favorites. The sprint stage, I think it'll be a sprint stages 3 stages from now. Has to be that because it's the last possible chance for the sprinters to be able to win a stage here at the Giro. So why continue if you're not going to go all in for that stage sprint? Now, the last individual time trial could be really crucial because on paper right now, when we're looking at the results, Jai Hindley from Bora Hansgrohe, who Bora Hansgrohe you could say could have been one of those surprise teams, but I don't think so. When you're sitting there at training camp and you look at the stack roster that they brought here with Emmanuel Buchmann, Jai Hindley, Wilco Kelderman, and Leonard Kamna, you got to believe at the January training camp with Bora Hansgrohe that they were planning big results here at the Giro d'Italia. Are they a little surprised that they're sitting second on the general classification? Yes, but if you said that they were 3rd or 4th, they probably wouldn't be so surprised with that. So I think there's really only one spot that they're surprised about. When you look at Leonard Kamna's win, it can't be that much of a surprise that Leonard Kamna won a stage here at the Giro d'Italia. Jai Hindley's on exceptional form though. So with Jai Hindley and Richard Carapaz looking so close on these climbs together, on these next 2 stages, look for another Simon Yates being able to pull a stage win, or maybe even Giulio Ciccone has his climbing legs. Now, he didn't have any climbing legs back on the earlier stages to help Juan Lopez defend that pink jersey, but somehow, magically enough, the very next stage, Giulio Ciccone had absolutely stellar legs to win stage 15. And so look for him. If that form continues, he could be in this front group. And because he's down on the general classification, if we're talking Richard Carapaz accelerates on this stage 16 or 17 and he can get away with a Simon Yates or Giulio Ciccone, there could be a deal made right there on the spot where you see their heads turn. One turns right, one turns left. They both give each other the nod. One gets the stage, one gets more time on the general classification. But it's going to be a tight battle with Jai Hindley and Richard Carapaz up these next mountain stages. So the individual time trial on the last stage here at the Giro could become very important. Look for any kind of time chances to get extra bonuses throughout these next stages as being really important because Richard Carapaz can't time trial and Jai Hindley can't time trial either. So we got a lot to look forward to on this next week, the last week here at the Giro d'Italia. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next edition, stage 16 of the Butterfly Effect.